Henkel, entrepreneurship belongs to our leadership commitments. They give us guidance on how to develop our leadership skills and foster a culture of empowerment. For us as a company, it's essential that we all think, act, and behave like entrepreneurs in order to grow the company and to grow ourselves. It's a pleasure that Rachael is joining me today. Rachael, you are a human resource business partner taking care of our colleagues in research and development for the consumer goods business units. I'm really looking forward to have a conversation with you on the importance of entrepreneurship.
Thank you very much, Sylvie. Pleasure to be here.
So let's get started immediately. So what does entrepreneurship mean to you personally?
Entrepreneurship is a really exciting word. I think it means trying something new. I think it means discovering something. I think it's an energetic word. I also think, for me personally, it can feel a bit scary, and that's because if you're trying something new, you don't know 100% that it's going to work out the way you want it to. So you need to take a risk. You need to take an intelligent risk. You need to feel safe to take that risk. And I think that's why working in an environment where entrepreneurialism is celebrated, and also one where you feel safe to take those calculated risks, is really important.
Thank you for that. I think what you said is important for our colleagues also to understand that when you take risk, you might also make some mistakes. And that's also part of being an entrepreneur. I think you can never be successful if you have been doing everything right from the first time. You probably need to learn, repeat, scale, do it differently. Do you feel that in the department you are taking care of, research and development, we create a good environment for people to take risks and to learn from their mistakes?
I think we do, absolutely, but could we do more? Yes, we can always do more. So I agree, we need to make sure that people feel safe to take those risks, and I think some of the things that we do to really cultivate that curiosity comes from our consumer obsession. So in R&D, one of the things we want to make sure that runs through the whole department, and it's the lifeblood of innovation, is that curiosity about the consumer, that consumer obsession. So we now have a consumer technical insight team that also helps to really embed that across all of the departments. We celebrate curiosity, we celebrate innovation. So we had something recently called the Shark Tank, and it was a cross-functional initiative where people were inspired to work alone or in teams, submit brilliant claims ideas for existing products. So they had to think differently, they had to come up with something new. And it culminated with a wonderful celebration of the ideas with winners. And I think it created a real sense of pride and a real sense of discovery, even with our existing portfolio. So we already have initiatives that I think really play into building that entrepreneurial spirit, but we know, of course, if we want to be entrepreneurial, we also can't stop creating new initiatives and reinforcing the behaviors that will encourage our teams to be more entrepreneurial.
And what do you think the leaders can or should do even more to make the teams feel comfortable with risk-taking, with eventually learning from failures? Is there anything that you would like to see more, or that you observe today and you would say, that's great, that's really helping people to manage eventually the fears they might have?
Yes. I think one of the best things that anyone can do is to model vulnerability. So from our leaders, from our peers, to be able to create an environment where people can say, I took an intelligent risk, and I think it's really important that we define the differences. You know, there are sometimes, you can make a simple mistake and it's fine, but you can also make an intelligent mistake, take an intelligent risk, and that's something where you put the right level of thought into making that decision. You had the right support around you to make that decision, and you believed the outcome would be good, and it wasn't. That will unveil a valuable learning that you should be generous enough to share with others. But that sometimes takes vulnerability. We're humans. We don't like to admit that we've made a mistake. We don't like to say, I failed. That word can feel heavy. So I think it's really important that we try and make sure our leaders feel comfortable to reframe that and say, I learned something and let me share it with you. And I see that in lots of the modern leaders that we have within our organization. And I think the more that we accept that learning and that gift of the learning it really is a gift for others to be able to probably go on to discover something even better or something even newer, I think is really something we need to harness.
I really like that, and I also think it should start from the top, actually, because for sure if leaders are not showing that vulnerability, it's very difficult for the team members to do it. So I think it's an encouragement for all of us to be open to recognize mistakes. And I think we should also not make that word mistake too big, you know. Mistake can be, hey, I did not see that coming, or I should have listened better. I should have maybe invested a bit more time here because then we could have done that differently. So it's not necessary I launched a big project and it failed.
Yes.
And speaking about words interpretation and how in a corporate world, you know, things can be interpreted differently from one team or one geography to another. I had the feeling sometimes that this commitment, this leadership commitment on entrepreneurship was seen as something very big that is not accessible for everyone in the company. So how can we make sure that we make that word very tangible for everyone and that we make clear that everyone can contribute to that? How do you see that?
You know, I think there's something really simple that we could do. I think we could train a muscle where we say, what if we? And anyone can say that. It doesn't matter where you work in our organization. You could be looking at a project status. You could be discussing a new idea. And if you just remember to ask the question, what if we? It's going to trigger a thought. It's going to trigger something that isn't on the piece of paper that you're looking at, that isn't on the PowerPoint presentation that you're maybe receiving. And I think it encourages us to just think a little bit bigger. So I try and remember myself when and entrepreneurialism sometimes is something you have to tap into. It doesn't always come as a natural default, but if you can learn simple things that help you tap into that, like saying, what if we?
That's a very good advice. What if we? Yes. So a very good advice that we can all capture. And speaking of advice, you've not always been working in human resources.
You're right.
Yeah, you had already another part of your career which happened in marketing.
I did.
And you made that move from business to a function which is human resources. So what did you bring with you from marketing to human resources that helps you in your current job in relation to entrepreneurship? What can you share?
So I'm going to go back to the consumer on this one, and my consumer has just changed. So I had 16 years in marketing, and my consumer used to be someone that I always tried to get to know. So she was outside of my office, and I always worked in beauty. So I say generally my consumer was female. So I always tried to really build that consumer centricity. And now I'm in HR, my consumer is still the most important thing to me. It's just somebody different. So my consumer now is the population that I look after. And I think where we talk about this kind of consumer centricity and consumer obsession, that's relevant for us in HR as well. It's just maybe our consumer's different.
That's a very beautiful way to think about it. I have to say that everyone can capture. Actually, we all have customers, consumers, stakeholders that we should put in the center. And I really believe that's what entrepreneurs, especially in small companies, are doing. They are obsessed with their consumers, obviously. And speaking about small companies or big companies, so I think it's not a secret, we're a big corporation. We are global, we have a lot of employees worldwide, so that makes sometimes the decision process probably a bit longer than in small companies where, you know, the maybe 50 employees of the company are sitting together in the same location. So how can we crack that from your perspective? What can we do better to be, we will never be a startup obviously, but to be faster, to be stronger in being more decision-making oriented? Where do you see we still have a few nuts to crack?
Yeah. So I think there's a few things. One of them we've already spoken about, and that's the importance of psychological safety. So creating an environment where our people feel trusted to take the right level of risks and to try new things without waiting for a decision or to be told. So we need to make sure that we've got that culture of trust and psychological safety. I think we also need clarity, so our people also need to be clear on how far can I go? What kind of decisions can I take? How much risk am I able to take so that also that they don't wait for direction if it's within their scope of control? So I know it's not linked to speed necessarily, but the other thing that I was reflecting on when I was thinking about entrepreneurship was the importance of resilience. So I think people build their personal resilience in different ways. So for some people, if I think of myself, I value energy from others. So I know if I've made an intelligent mistake, I would really benefit from a sparring partner, someone that I can talk to, I can talk it through, that can reflect with me, help me formulate how I share my learnings, and that honestly builds my resilience. That gives me the time and the space to process and then to be able to share that learning wider. But I think when we talk about entrepreneurship and we know that that is intrinsically linked with taking some intelligent risks, we can't ignore the fact that we also need to build that resilience muscle in our people, because there will be setbacks and they need to understand how do they build their own resilience? What's going to work for them to be able to overcome those setbacks?
We talked about psychological safety, we talked about risk, we talked about resilience, but you also said trust.
Yes.
I'm very curious to learn how in the research and development organization of the consumer business, you've worked together with the leadership team on how we can build more trust, which is essential to act as entrepreneur. Can you share a few words with us on that?
Yes, absolutely. And I think I'll go back to something you said at the beginning, Sylvie. It starts from the top. It always starts from the top. So one of the things that we have embraced, and it's something we've had for a long time at Henkel, is this concept of checking in. So making sure that our teams, when they come together, they don't only spend time on the operational, but they also spend time connecting. And a check-in has evolved and it will continue to evolve. Sometimes it's a simple emotional check-in. Sometimes it's what percentage in the room are you today? Are you here 100%? Or has something happened at home? Is that on your mind? And if so, how can we help you to be with us here today in this meeting? So I think for us, it's always about making sure the teams know the importance of connecting on an emotional and a personal level in service of business results. So we continue to reinforce that in R&D. We leverage the check-in format, but we also make sure that we give them continuous inspiration on what that check-in could look like so they don't lose sight of how important that human connection is.
Cannot agree more with you that the check-in is creating a moment where we all lend together, and sometimes it just helps to clear the air before you get into discussion or creative mood, which is so important for us to be entrepreneurs. Thank you very much for sharing your impressions, your personal conviction, but also your tips with me today. And maybe to conclude, I would really keep and cherish this small tip that you gave to us. What if, can we all ask ourselves this question regularly? What if? I think that's a very precious tip. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you, Sylvie.